Welcome. It's me, Aaron the Artist. Thanks for joining me today for another relaxing drawing lesson. All you're going to need for this lesson is a simple office pencil. I'm going to be going over how to place and draw the facial features in the side view. Now, I've had a previous video about how to draw the head from the front, three-quarter, and side views. But what I didn't go over in that video is how exactly to place and draw each of the facial features, because they are actually all quite different in the side view than they are from the front. Now, just like usual, we're going to start off by drawing a straightforward circle and dividing it in half vertically. Now, we're going to need a few guidelines for where the facial features will be placed. I'm going to start with this line here for the hairline, which takes just a slither off of the top of the circle. I reckon that's about 1/5 of the circle that we've cut off for where the hairline will be. And then we're going to go just a little bit below halfway. If this is halfway, we're going a little bit below halfway for the eyebrow line. And then the bottom of the circle is going to be where we place our nose. We can actually repeat that distance underneath to show us where the chin will be. Now that we've got those few lines in place, I'm going to connect the mark for the chin up to the side of the face with a vertical line like this. And then we're in position to rough out where the ear will go. The ear will go right on our center vertical line, and it'll sit at about the eyebrow line, and it'll end before the tip of the nose line. Everybody's ears are a slightly different size, so not everything's going to be the same, but that's roughly where it will go. Notice here how much space we're leaving for the forehead as usual. This whole section up here is going to be the forehead all the way down to the eyebrow line here. And to figure out where the nose goes, we're going to follow the curve of that circle down from the eyebrow line, just a fraction. It might be about 1/3 of the way down towards that nose line. And then we're going to start to angle outwards to create a kind of snout. Now, you can make this more or less pointy depending on your style. But then we're going to push all the way down towards the chin, like this. Both of these lines are roughly between 45 and 60 degrees in angle. It varies a little bit depending on the character that you're drawing. As a beginner, I always used to struggle with quite how far to draw the very tip of the nose out from the face. Now, obviously it varies, but I'd say that the nose that I've drawn here is about 1/3 of the distance between the edge of the circle and the halfway point of the circle where we drew that vertical line. I'd say it's about 1/3 of that distance repeated, sticking outward from the face. But if you do it slightly more than that, the character will have a bigger nose. If you do it less than that, the character will have a smaller nose. It's not that big a deal, but that's roughly the distance that I'm working with here. Now that that's out of the way, we're going to go ahead and connect the chin up to the jaw. We're going to pull a line back from the chin all the way towards the ear. It's slightly steeper near the ear and then gradually gets shallower as we get towards the chin. When it comes to connecting the neck from this angle, you can pretty much always see this little triangular wedge shape which bridges that gap between the chin and the neck. Now, I never used to draw this little triangle, and you often find that the connection between the neck and the chin is way too abrupt and sharp if you don't have that little wedge transition. So make sure to get that in there. How do you know where the nose is going to end? Well, remember, we drew this marking for the tip of the nose right at the bottom of that circle, and that's where the nose ends and where the mouth is going to start. When it comes to drawing the mouth, we want to follow the snout that we drew loosely. We're going to stick out a little bit for the upper lip, and then stick out again but slightly less for the lower lip, and then stick out again even less right at the bottom for the chin. The key is that we're just very loosely sticking to that gradient that we set up when we drew that initial diagonal line between the nose and the chin. We don't have to follow it exactly, we can vary from it a little bit, but we stay to it pretty near. I should say, of course, that this is just one type of face. It's a very stereotypically anime face. You can certainly draw other face shapes that don't follow this exact pattern. The next two easiest things to draw in are the nose and the mouth. For the nose, we just need to add a little dot here for a nostril. You want it to be closer to the mouth than you do to the tip of the nose. And then for the mouth, we're going to leave a little gap between where we draw the mouth and the outline of the lips on the edge of the face. And then we're just going to put in a little line for the mouth where the crack of the opening of the mouth would be. It's quite important to leave that gap between the edge of the lips and the mouth because you want to give the sense that the lips wrap around that crack of the mouth. The eye is one of the most important parts of the face, obviously, and it's important that we get it right from this angle. One beginner mistake is to draw the eye as if it's in the front view, even though we're now in the side view. The eye looks significantly different in the side view. From this angle, it looks much more like a triangle or a wedge than it does an almond shape, and we need to draw it as a triangle or a wedge. As well as that, when it comes to drawing the eyelashes, we need to think in 3 dimensions here. Look at the way I have wrapped the eyelashes around the front of the eye. They don't just sit on top of that eyelid. They wrap all the way around the front of the eye as if they're going back around the other side. And when we draw the iris, we want to draw it right up against the edge of the eye there, and we want it to be significantly squished because we're looking at the iris from the side now, so it's going to appear much more like a really narrow oval than it would from the front view. When we add the eyelashes from this angle, it's important that some of them splay down over the front of the eye. When you draw the eye from the front, we tend to just add the eyelashes on the corner of the eye. But when we draw the eye from the side, the most visible eyelashes in real life are those which fold over the front of the eye. So it's every bit as important that we pay attention to some of those eyelashes which fan out over the front of the eye. One thing I like to do from this angle, especially with anime characters, is draw some of the eyelash from the eye that's on the other side of the face. Now, I suppose that you probably wouldn't be able to see this from a direct profile view, but I like to do it especially with anime characters because it adds a sense of the 3-dimensionality of the character, and anime characters have big enough eyelashes that you could probably pull it off. As far as the ear goes, ears are a very strange structure, and there's not any really easy way to remember how to draw them. There's just a kind of sequence of items that you need to be able to draw, and these are them that you see on screen right now. I think at this point it's worth stopping because you can really see at this stage quite how big the top portion of the head is compared to the lower half. Everything above the eyebrow is roughly the same length in total as everything below the eyebrow. Now, I've definitely seen successful anime on TV and successful manga that have exactly these proportions, and sometimes perhaps foreheads that are even bigger than this. But it's not to everybody's tastes, and you can, if you want to, shave a little bit off of the head in the way that I just have to make things a little bit more palatable. In any case, I often find that the character doesn't look quite so uncanny once you have one of those big anime hairstyles on top. In terms of the hairline comes from a point at the front of the forehead, and then it pulls back, and just as you get to passing the eyebrow is where it starts to stick back out towards the front of the face, and then it curves back down towards the ear. And that is just about how I would go about placing all of the facial features and what they would look like in the profile view. I am going to just finish off this drawing, add some hair and some shading just to polish things off. But that is everything that we needed to go over today. I hope you managed to learn something from this video. If you want to see any of my personal art, you can check that out over on YouTube Shorts. If you have an idea for a different tutorial that you want to see, let me know in the comments. Until next time, have a nice day, folks.